What transpired on live television was something nobody could have predicted. Ibrahim Traoré presented Oprah Winfrey with a profound reality so potent it left her speechless. Her emotional, unguarded reaction moved the studio audience and global viewers to tears. This remarkable conversation is now being hailed as one of the year's most impactful interviews. It all began with an unassuming phone call on a drizzly Monday afternoon. Ibrahim Traoré, the transitional president of Burkina Faso, was concluding his workday when an aide brought him a telephone. "Mr. President," she murmured, "Oprah Winfrey's office is on the line. They are requesting an appearance on her program." He stopped, taken aback. He knew of Oprah, as most the world did, but he was not a man drawn to media spectacles. "For what reason?" he inquired. "They mentioned they have been observing your leadership and wish to speak with the person behind the position." After a considerable pause, he gave a slow nod. "Inform them I will be there." What nobody foresaw, not Oprah, not Ibrahim, not the millions who would tune in, was that this interview would evolve into one of the most poignant moments in the history of live television. By Wednesday night, Ibrahim found himself in Chicago. Waiting in the green room of Oprah's studio, the exterior lights were intense, and the energy of the waiting audience was already palpable. Oprah herself entered the backstage area, a welcoming smile gracing her features. "Mr. Traoré," she greeted, offering her hand, "I have been greatly anticipating this." He rose, his handshake firm yet considerate. "As have I," he answered. Yet beneath the pleasantries, a current of tension was present. Oprah was renowned for her probing questions that cut through facades, and Ibrahim, while composed, was not a man to sidestep difficult truths. As the cameras began to roll and they made their way to the stage, both of them offered the kind of courteous smiles that concealed a deeper dynamic at play. No one in that audience could have imagined how quickly those smiles would disappear or how many tears were about to be shed. Oprah began gently, inquiring about his upbringing, his path to leadership, and his aspirations for Burkina Faso. Ibrahim replied with humility, his words deliberate and his tone steady. But then Oprah shifted forward, her gaze both sharp and compassionate. "Mr. Traoré," she posed, "you speak a great deal about hope, but isn't it a fact that your nation remains among the poorest in the world, that your people continue to suffer under your governance? How do you justify that alongside your claims of leadership?" A wave of gasps went through the crowd. The atmosphere grew thick. Ibrahim remained unmoved. He met her gaze directly, his own eyes unwavering. And then, in a very soft voice, he said something utterly unexpected. "You know," he started, "poverty is not always what it seems, and perhaps it is time someone shared the truth with you." Oprah's breath hitched. The audience was now completely still. For what felt like the first time in her storied career, Oprah Winfrey seemed uncertain. What he would say next would bring her and the world to tears. The audience was now so quiet, you could hear a pin drop, almost as if they were afraid to exhale. Oprah looked at Ibrahim, her trademark composure slightly fractured by his unflinching stare. She eventually spoke again, her voice more resolute this time. "Then please tell me, Mr. Traoré," she requested. "If poverty isn't what we perceive it to be, what is it?" Ibrahim settled back in his chair, folding his hands in his lap before taking a slow breath. He started to speak softly. "Poverty," he stated, "is not simply the absence of money. It is the absence of dignity. It is the feeling a mother has when she feels invisible while her children go hungry. It is the farmer who prays for a rain that doesn't arrive. It is the child who ceases to dream because nobody ever made him feel that he was important." Oprah's lips parted almost imperceptibly, as she was caught off guard by the way his words seemed to bypass the stage lights and cameras, landing directly in her own heart. "You understand," he continued, his voice serene, "what truly wounds people is not an empty wallet. It is the feeling that the world has deemed them worthless." Oprah blinked rapidly, as if resisting an emotion she hadn't prepared for, and the audience began to stir uncomfortably. The silence in the studio extended, far longer than any producer would normally permit, but no one had the nerve to break it. Oprah glanced down for a second before looking up again, her eyes glistening in the bright lights. She attempted to form a sentence, but her voice caught eye. She started and then paused. Ibrahim gave her space, simply observing her with a gentle, non-judgmental patience. Finally, Oprah managed to find her voice. "I've spoken with presidents, with kings, with billionaires," she confessed, her tone low. "But not one of them has ever articulated it that way, and not one has ever made me feel it so deeply." The audience let out a soft, collective gasp. Oprah placed her hand over her heart as a single tear traced a path down her cheek. "I have built my life on telling stories," she whispered. "But I believe tonight I am the one learning a story I never truly grasped." Ibrahim reached for his glass of water, took a deliberate sip, and while still looking at her, said only one thing: "It is never too late to truly see people for the first time." At that, Oprah bowed her head, and a change swept through the studio. It began with a sniffle from the front rows, where a woman dabbed at her eyes. Then another followed. Then a man in the back let out a stifled sob. The gravity of Ibrahim's words, paired with Oprah's raw emotional display, had unlocked something profound in the room. Even the seasoned camera operators were blinking hard against tears. Oprah eventually raised her head, her eyes red, but a soft, almost innocent smile returned to her face. "You possess a great gift," she said, her voice heavy with emotion. "You help us remember what it means to be human." Ibrahim shook his head softly. "No," he corrected. "I only help people remember what they already know deep down, but have forgotten how to express." In that moment, a wave of applause started, hesitantly at first, then growing in volume until it became a full standing ovation. Oprah rose to her feet as well, wiping her cheeks as she embraced him. For the first time in many years, she was unconcerned with the cameras, the ratings, or the show's schedule. And as the applause filled the studio, millions of viewers at home felt a stirring within themselves, a feeling they had not experienced in a very long time. It was hope. As the cameras continued to roll, Oprah managed to collect herself somewhat, though a distinct tremor remained in her voice. She leaned forward and asked gently, "If you had the power to change one single thing about the world today, what would you choose?" Ibrahim gazed down at his hands for a lengthy moment. The room held its breath. When he finally looked up, his eyes seemed to carry an almost unbearable weight. "I would remove the notion that some lives are less valuable than others." A deep silence descended upon the studio. "You see," he went on, "we have constructed systems where worth is judged by wealth, by the color of one's skin, by the passport one carries. But a mother in Burkina Faso, crying over her starving child, sheds the same tears as a mother here. Yet the world ignores her suffering, as if she were destined for it." Oprah swallowed with difficulty, her eyes again shining with unshed tears. He leaned forward just a fraction and whispered, "That is the most profound violence of all. To convince someone that they are invisible." The studio lights seemed to have lost some of their warmth after that. By this point, the entire atmosphere in the room had transformed. People who had arrived expecting a standard interview were now perched on the edge of their seats, some clutching tissues, others simply staring at Ibrahim in awed silence. One woman in the audience was now weeping openly, while another was heard murmuring, "He's right. Oh my God, he's right." Oprah leaned back for a second, then turned to face the camera. "I believe everyone watching at home is feeling what we are feeling in this room," she said softly. Ibrahim offered a small, sad smile, because deep down he responded, "We all are aware of the truth. We just allow ourselves to forget how to feel it." He then shared a story about a young boy he had encountered just days before his trip to America. A child who had clung to his leg, pleading not for money, but simply for him to tell the world that they were real. "He said to me," Ibrahim recounted, "Please, when you leave this place, do not forget us." At that statement, several members of the audience broke down completely, and Oprah brought her hand to her heart. "Ibrahim," she started, but she could not complete the thought. Even before the cameras cut away, clips of their conversation were already spreading like wildfire online. On Twitter, the hashtag #DoNotForgetUs was trending within minutes. Viewers from all corners of the globe began posting their own experiences, of feeling invisible, of being overlooked, of yearning to be seen. On the YouTube livestream, comments scrolled by too quickly to be read, but most conveyed a similar sentiment: "I'm in tears. Thank you for this. And why does this hurt so much? Because it is true. Back in the studio, Oprah finally stood and took Ibrahim's hand. "I am at a loss for words," she admitted, her voice breaking, "but I give you my promise, I will not forget." Ibrahim also stood, and for the first time that night, his smile was warm and full. "That," he said, "is all anyone could ever ask." The two shared a gentle embrace, and in a corner of the studio, a producer who had never shed a tear on the job wiped his eyes. In that single instant, everyone had remembered what it felt like to be human again. As the show cut to a commercial break, the studio was utterly still. Oprah remained seated, her typical composure replaced by a raw and exposed vulnerability. Ibrahim leaned forward slightly, his hands folded peacefully. "You look as though you carry the weight of the entire world," he observed softly, almost in a whisper. Oprah blinked, looking at him. "It is my job too," she answered, managing a faint smile. Ibrahim tilted his head, his warm gaze holding hers. "But it is not what you were born for," he said gently. "You deserve to be seen as well." The words struck her with unexpected force. For the first time in years, she couldn't contain her tears. The producer's countdown to go live again was audible, but the moment hung in the air, fragile and sacred. Oprah wiped a tear from her cheek and whispered back to him, How do you manage to keep your heart so open?" Ibrahim's answer was simple, yet it would soon become the most quoted line from the entire interview. "You cannot change what you refuse to let yourself feel." And as the cameras came back on, millions across the globe would witness a side of Oprah and of themselves that they never knew was there. Oprah pulled herself together and asked, "Where does this wisdom originate? Have you always been this way?" Ibrahim's expression softened as he leaned back. "I was not born wise," he confessed. "I was born in the dust." He then shared the story of his mother, a woman who had raised him in a small hut with a leaking roof and empty cupboards. She would tell him at night, "My son, our hands may be empty, but do not ever let your heart be," he recalled one morning. As a 5-year-old, waking to see his mother boiling stones in a pot just to soothe his hunger because there was no food to give him, "I asked her why she didn't weep," he said, his own voice cracking for the first time. "She told me, 'If I weep, who will teach you how to hope?'" The entire studio was silent, with some now weeping without restraint. Oprah covered her mouth, visibly shaken, as Ibrahim added quietly, "I learned that pain can either make you bitter or it can make you better, but the choice is yours." The audience was to overcome with emotion to even applaud. Outside the studio, in real time, segments of the interview were going viral before the broadcast had even concluded. The hashtags #BetterNotBitter and #DoNotForgetUs were trending globally. One viewer posted, "I have never cried during an interview until tonight. This man speaks for every one of us who has been made to feel invisible." Another wrote, "Ibrahim Traoré just altered my perspective on life with a single sentence. God bless him." Back in the studio, Oprah's eyes shimmered as she said, "You have given everyone a gift tonight, Ibrahim." Ibrahim shook his head. "The gift," he answered, "is that you chose to listen." He reached into his jacket pocket and took out a folded photograph of his mother holding him as a young boy. He set it gently on the table in front of Oprah. "She would want me to remind you," he said, "that no matter how much you are carrying, you are not carrying it alone." Oprah held the photograph, tears now falling without resistance. As the audience rose in the longest, most heartfelt standing ovation of the evening, as the crowd slowly settled after the standing ovation, Oprah reached beneath her chair, searching for something. When she looked back up, her hands were trembling. "I hadn't planned to share this," she began, her voice barely audible. Ibrahim watched her with a calm attentiveness as she unfolded a single, creased piece of paper. "It's a letter," she explained, her eyes already filled with tears, "from a young girl on the south side of Chicago. She wrote to me years ago, saying she wanted to end her life because she felt no one would care if she was gone." Oprah paused to compose herself, holding the letter up. "Tonight, Ibrahim, you have said everything I wish I had known how to say to her." Ibrahim leaned forward and gently took the letter from her. He read it in silence for a moment, then looked at Oprah. "She is still with us," he said with a quiet conviction. Oprah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Yes," he affirmed, Because when even one person dares to truly see her, she can find the strength to continue. The room was silent, yet heavy with emotion. At that very moment, a studio assistant slipped Oprah a note, revealing that the young woman had just tweeted, "I am watching this, and I am still here. Thank you." The broadcast was scheduled to have ended 5 minutes prior, but no one dared to interrupt them. The cameras kept recording as Oprah whispered something to her producer. A phone on the desk rang. Oprah put it on speaker. A young, hesitant voice came through. "Miss Winfrey, ... Is this really live?" Oprah nodded at Ibrahim and replied softly, "Yes, my dear, you're live." The young woman on the line began to sob. I saw you and him, and I just had to say thank you. I thought no one saw me." Ibrahim's eyes glistened, but his voice remained firm. "You are seen," he stated with authority, "and you matter more than you can ever imagine." Even the camera operators were wiping at their eyes as the girl whispered back, "You saved my life." Oprah broke down completely then, covering her face as the call ended. Ibrahim stood and placed a hand gently on Oprah's shoulder. "You have been saving lives all along," he told her. "Tonight was just a reminder of why." The studio audience erupted in a quiet, sincere round of applause, some getting to their feet once more. Oprah, through her tears, managed to smile at Ibrahim. "You have the heart of a lion," she whispered. The interview finally concluded. But no one was in a hurry to leave the studio. People remained in their seats, reluctant to depart from the warmth of the moment they had just experienced. As Oprah stood to bid him farewell with a hug, she said, her voice filled with emotion, "I believed I was here to interview you, but you have taught me more in 1 hour than I've learned in years." Ibrahim smiled faintly. "Pain is a faster teacher than privilege will ever be," he responded, "but the heart always decides what to do with the lesson." By now, Twitter was inundated with millions of posts. The hashtags #Lionheart and #IAMSeen were trending at #1 worldwide. One viewer commented, "If every world leader spoke like Ibrahim Traoré, perhaps we would all remember we are human first." Another wrote, "I've never cried this hard watching television. Bless this man. Bless Oprah for allowing this to happen." Before he departed the studio, Ibrahim faced the cameras a final time. His voice was calm but carried profound meaning. See the invisible, hear the voiceless, stand for the forgotten. That is where our humanity truly begins. The broadcast signal faded, but the world was just starting to feel the impact. The cameras stopped rolling, but a reverent quiet remained in the studio. Oprah sat back in her chair, staring off into the distance as the crew began to slowly dismantle the set. Ibrahim stood quietly at the edge of the stage, his hands clasped. He had not spoken another word after his last message on air. Eventually, Oprah got up and walked over to him. Her makeup was streaked with tears she no longer bothered to conceal. "Why did you really come here tonight?" she asked him directly. Ibrahim smiled faintly, his eyes filled with a deep humility. "To remind people," he said simply, "that being truly seen is the greatest gift one human can offer another. You see millions, Oprah, but who truly sees you?" Her lips trembled, he continued. "Even those who appear the strongest are fighting their own battles to be heard. You taught the world how to listen. Now, it's time to let the world listen to you." For a long moment, Oprah just stood there, overcome. Then, softly, she whispered, "Thank you for seeing me tonight." They embraced. No cameras were there to film it, but millions had felt it. The following morning, conversations on streets around the globe were not about politics, but about humanity. Clips of Ibrahim's.com, powerful statements, filled social media feeds and mobile phones. Cafes had the interview playing on a continuous loop. Even schools were discussing what it meant to see the invisible. In Burkina Faso, thousands congregated in Ouagadougou, holding signs that read, "We are seen and better, not bitter." Children wore handmade t-shirts with Ibrahim's image. Mothers wept openly in the streets, expressing they had never felt more proud of their leader. In Chicago, a group of high school students painted a large mural of Oprah holding the photograph of Ibrahim's mother. Underneath, they wrote, "Hope is a choice." At home, Oprah sat in her quiet living room, replaying the interview over and over. Each time she heard his words, "See the invisible, hear the voiceless, she felt a powerful emotion in her chest. She sent him a private message that said only, "You changed more lives in 1 hour than most of us can in a lifetime." It changed mine. In Ouagadougou, Ibrahim read her message and smiled. By the end of the week, more than 120 million people had viewed the interview. News headlines were calling it the most moving television moment of the year. But for Ibrahim, it was never about the headlines, it was about touching hearts. He was visiting a small village school that Friday afternoon, watching children play soccer barefoot in the dust. A little girl approached him shyly. "Sir," she asked softly, "why did you make Oprah cry?" He knelt down to her level and smiled. "Because," he said, "sometimes tears are the way hope finds its way back into our hearts." The little girl grinned and scampered back to her friends, and Ibrahim stood there peacefully, looking at the sky. Feeling a sense of calm that night, Oprah closed her show with a final reflection. "We all carry unseen burdens," she said, "but every once in a while, someone reminds us that we are still human and still deserving of love. Thank you, Ibrahim, for reminding me." And viewers everywhere cried as they watched, feeling a little lighter and a little more seen. Dear viewer, if this story resonated with you, if it touched you in any way, please don't let this moment pass without letting me know. Click the like button, subscribe for more stories that have an impact, and leave a comment below with the words, "I am seen." Let's continue this ripple of humanity together.